Dogstar because we don't assign gender to the entity that came from there, as it was an amorphous blob of consciousness that just happened to chance about the vibrant sound frequencies of the music of the Ramones. He just wanted to just search out and seek the source of that beautiful discordant noise.
So this entity is a form of pure consciousness who's living in
Yes.
the Dogstar.
It's a form of pure consciousness, and so are all his other friends, compatriots, his tribes people. They're just forms of consciousness, bliss, no body, no mind, no worries.
Does this entity have a name?
For the sake of clarity, let's call him Sobek.
So Sobek is in the Dogstar realm.
Yep.
What's he up to?
He's just chilling, just experiencing a constant blissful existence with no past, no future, just the present. No troubles, no worries, no thoughts, no concerns, just existing in pure, pure, pure ecstasy.
And what happens to kickstart his journey?
Well, the entities for the Dogstar indulge in an activity called bathing in sound waves. And at one point, as he is bathing in sound waves, he comes upon a discordance, something out of the ordinary, something out of sequence, something out of harmony. And what separates him from the others of his tribe is a sense of curiosity. So he's like, I have to find out where the source of this is. So he follows it all the way to Earth, New York City, Manhattan, the Bowery, 315 Bowery, CBGB's, the club that birthed punk music as we know it in the late 70s.
CBGBs I've seen written on t-shirts.
Well, everybody has a t-shirt, but nobody really knows the story, do they?
What's that then?
CBGB's was the club that was the incubator for all the punk bands that you know, like the Ramones, the Clash, the Heartbreakers, the New York Dolls, Blondie. I can go on, but it was just a little dive bar that gave birth to the whole phenomenon of punk music as we know it, which what punk music is rock and roll played really fast.
So Sobek was bathing in interstellar sound waves,
Yep.
got hit by a ray of discordance, followed it, ended up hovering over Earth, and he zoned in, and he ended up in the 70s in New York,
As
listening
an
to punk
amorphous entity, invisible to everyone. And he just immediately, imagine like, this is a metaphor for a godlike figure. Omnipotent, omnipresent, omnipotent, but our earthly experiences and our earthly activities are what gave him the incentive to try and explore what was beyond even his godlike existence. So he decided to become a human being.
Wow, really?
Yep.
From God to human?
Yep.
But why?
Well, you know, when you are perfect, you seek out imperfections. You seek out something beyond yourself. You seek out something that can excite you, something that can offer you more. There's always the craving of more and more. Even as a perfect being, you need more. And he found more in the exploration of that sound wave.
So, what was Sobek's human experience like?
He landed at 315 Bowery, right outside of the CBGB's club, as an amorphous, bodiless, invisible entity. He scoped out the crowd outside gathered. It was a Ramones, Heartbreakers joint concert. And he went at the alley behind the hotel right next to CBGB's, and by the data that he had collected, assembled a human body for himself through quantum entanglement, through spectrum analysis. So he became a fully fledged male human being, adult, in his like late 20s, early 30s, whatever you want to call it. Naked though, he couldn't assemble clothes for himself, could he?
So Sobek is in the club naked as a 20
He's
to 30.
outside the club. Yeah.
Okay. So as if someone was standing right here, right now, butt naked in front of us.
Yeah, well, approaching, and you know, punks have a bad reputation. They're mostly characterized as being like outsiders or dangerous or like criminals or like unwanted outcasts, you know. But instead of mocking him or harming him, they form a circle around him and protect him from the February cold of New York City. And Monty Melnick, the manager of the Ramones, offers to give him some clothes, some spare clothes that left by the Ramones that are playing the concert that night at their van in the alley behind the club. So he gets decked out in Joey Ramone's torn jean trousers, Johnny Ramone's shredded van sneakers, Didi Ramone's leather jacket and t-shirt, and he's led by everybody inside the club where he will be able to experience the music which he heard in the form of sound waves full force.
So he's there on the Ramones show.
Yeah.
The first
1976, 11 o'clock in the morning, February 1st.
Newly birthed human existence, experiencing everything all at once.
Well, imagine, instead of being born as a baby, beginning to experience human existence as an adult suddenly, just like that.
Does he stick around?
Oh, he sticks around. He sticks around as fuck. Wouldn't you?
I don't know. Would you? I don't know. Yeah?
Why the fuck not?
I mean, that's a lot of feelings.
A lot of feelings, intense feelings, simultaneous feelings, intense feelings, and it only gets better from there.
What happens to him next?
Well, he becomes entangled in the whole scene of all the coolest artists of the era, like Keith Haring, Jean-Michel Basquiat, Andy Warhol, all the Ramones, the Heartbreakers, Blondie, Debbie Harry, everybody who actually invented the culture that we're living in today at their prime, he was there. And because his nature was such, where he was always in the background and never taking center stage, never stealing focus, never trying to get attention, and being pure at heart like a baby, but in the form of an adult, all-knowing and able to communicate and navigate this existence. He was always welcome and always like they wanted him around. Everybody always wanted him around.
Everybody loves Sobek.
Everybody loves Sobek.
But Sobek, unlike, he's different from them. So how did that work out?
The only difference that this entity has, he doesn't have any superpowers. The only thing that differentiates him from all of us is that he's immune to entropy. Entropy means the tendency of a human being to decay, to age, to fall apart, to grow old, to get sick, to die. He doesn't. He just remains in his prime. That's a blessing and a curse.
I mean, if I couldn't age, it would be weird.
But we're good weird though.
Good, kind
I don't think
of.
you would complain. Would you guys like to stay young forever?
Right? But
Who wouldn't?
think
But
about
what
it.
if you stayed young forever and your loved ones started getting older and sick and died, and you had to carry on without everybody you loved forever and ever and ever?
I think that's extremely sad.
It's a blessing and a curse.
So what happens in Sobek's story?
Well, Sobek gets embedded in the culture. The first thing that attracted him to Earth is the culture, is the music, is the art, is the scene, the sincerity and the genuine expression, the genuine artistic expression that happened between the late 70s and the mid 2000s. These last 4 decades have been seminal, and I think he's been here for the ideal perfect segment of time to be experienced.
I'm starting to get the feeling that he might still be around.
Maybe he is, but the sad thing is that, first of all, we have to explain to these kind people here that every artwork you see around you is an intergalactic postcard. So these are transmissions that he sends back to his home and his friends back in the Dogstar, where he expresses his experiences, his feelings, everything that goes on in earthly existence in a symbolic language. But as we already mentioned, as he was unaware of the concept of time, of the concept of decay, of the concept of loss, everything starts joyous and optimistic and happy and wow, awesome, to suddenly, like, unexpectedly nostalgic and melancholy and devastating, and basically everything you've all experienced in your life, just not gradually, but suddenly.
So his postcards that we see on the walls around us are encoding, in a way, his experiences going through the human journey. Is
Yes,
that it?
in a symbolic language that can be best utilized when he communicates with his own people without using words, just using symbols, just using feelings.
Are there any that are extremely important in his story that you would like us to bring our attention to?
Let's do it, let's fall in love. This is the quintessential expression of trying to make a connection with another human being, a romantic connection,
Did he?
many times over.
But a real big one?
The real big one only happened once, but before that, he was exposed to the whole experience of interacting with members of the opposite sex, engaging in romantic activities, misinterpreting them for actual love when it was actually just a fun time.
Sounds familiar, no?
Sounds familiar to everybody. Everybody's looking for something deeper, but at the end of the day, that only happens once in a very blue moon.
I mean, the symbols in these pieces could be read in many, many different ways.
Sure.
But there are some that really stand out. For example, there is this devil who's meditating as the Buddha. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
That's called an essence portrait. That's it's down the corner behind that column. It's actually using the visual language of the Dogstar people, expressing one's own essence, one's own core values, one's own feelings, one's own, like, the essence of one's being, what actually makes you you, what makes you you. Who are you? What do you want? Have you ever asked yourself that? Who the fuck are you? What the fuck do you want? In real terms, like, at the end of the day, who the fuck are you? Who the fuck is anybody?
And this is something that seems to connect back with the punk era and the 70s, in contrast to the day that we're living in.
Well, unfortunately, the punk era has been misinterpreted as being about anarchy in the worst way possible, about crime, about disorder, when it was actually about romance, about poetry, about freedom, about self-expression, about the DIY spirit. Do it yourself. Use everything you have at your disposal to create something beautiful. And that started fading away as the years went by. 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s. Today, it's practically gone,
Yes, and that might be connected with the media that we use. So if you're talking about the punks using DIY approaches, which is to take rubbish off the streets, and we see punk as the inspiration for the way that you as the artist is working.
Well, yes.
The format that you're using that we see through the NFTs and through the digital light boxes, can you draw a comparison between the DIY then and now?
These are digital collages in the form of NFTs. I've used the simplest, most asinine way to create a digital image available to a human being. And I just wanted to prove that you can make something profound, something meaningful, using the most basic tools available to you. I could have used elaborate 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional, fucking realistic bullshit CGI to create something that's realistic looking, but I wanted to create something that was identifiable with everybody's emotions, everybody's feelings, something that everybody could identify with. Simple things. Simplicity is the best expressed mode of communication.
And the content of them is very simple, but when you put them all together, there's something very complex going on. And is this a sort of attempt to revive punk spirit, or is it a commentary on the way that we don't have it in our own daily lives anymore?
I will be very honest with you, and I will be very honest with everybody here. This is me paying homage to everybody from the punk era, like the Ramones, like the Clash, like the Sex Pistols, like Johnny Thunders and the Heartbreakers, like the Talking Heads. You can name any band. They saved my life because they showed me that life is worth living. There's hope. There's beauty in garbage. I mean, even in a puddle of mud, you can see the stars reflected.
Well, there's that old saying, we're all lying in the gutter, but only some of us are gazing up at the stars. Who was that?
Or by Oscar Wilde, one of my favorites. And it's some of us, but it could be all of us. So it's a choice, isn't it?
So let's go back to Sobek and the story. He has reached this moment of lack of, he's lost his lust for life. Is that?
Well, to actually elaborate on that, he gets into the whole human experience. He has all the experience that we've all had: falling in love, having crushes, getting drunk, eating delicious food, listening to amazing music, watching fantastic movies, and it's all a fucking, it's a golden age for him from day one. But as time goes by, he starts experiencing loss. He starts realizing there's such a thing as death in humanity, such a thing as people going away forever. They're here today and they're gone forever tomorrow, forever and ever. And he can't grasp that concept. And that goes for loved ones, that goes for culture, that goes for art, that goes for everything. So loss is something that Dogstar entities were never familiar with.
What does he do with his grief in that case?
As the years go by and as the decades go by, although in the beginning everybody around him is doing drugs and getting drunk and all that, he doesn't need to, because just the sheer experience of human emotions is enough for him. He realizes why people do drugs, why people get fucked up, why people shoot heroin, and he becomes a junkie himself after the loss of his best friend Jean-Michel Basquiat, Andy Warhol, Keith Haring, Johnny Thunders. Everybody starts going and going and going. He's like, fuck this shit. I need to be numb. I felt enough. I need to stop feeling. I don't want to feel anymore.
Is this when he starts sending the intergalactic postcards?
No, he sends intergalactic postcards from like the get-go, but they turn from enthusiastic, optimistic, hopeful, joyous into, more nostalgic, more desperate, sadder. And because he turned himself into a human being, he no longer possessed the capability to travel across space and time and to return to his planet. So he was desperately pleading with his friends through his postcards to come pick him up.
Do they?
I don't know. You tell me. They haven't yet.
I think
He's still waiting.
He's
still fucking waiting.
I think his friends are here right now.
Well, I guess they are. Yeah.
Well, say that they were here right now.
Sure. Well, listen, man. There's sacrifice for everything worthwhile. If you want to do something worthwhile, there's something you need to sacrifice. In Sobek's case, he sacrifices his godlike existence. He sacrifices his omnipotence. But even a godlike entity suffers up to a point where he just can't take it anymore. Us as human beings are stronger and more resilient than we can ever imagine. What we take for granted as an experience, what we take for granted as a passage of time, as aging, as the loss of loved ones, as decay, it's pretty brutal, right? It's pretty fucking brutal. So, there's no escape, or is there?
We make some escapes up as we go along, but at the end of the day,
you can only rely on your friends. Like John Lennon said, I'll get by with a little help from my friends.
So I have a feeling that his friends are listening, or at least they're looking for him.
Well, in the Dogstar story, the happy ending is his friends do get his messages. His friends do show up and volunteer to pick him up and get him back home. But as he narrates this whole story that I'm narrating to you right now, they start becoming jealous and they're like, dude, you experienced all this. What about us? We want to experience all this as well. We don't want to be just fucking amorphous, emotionless, godlike entities. We want to feel what you felt. We want to experience what's called feeling. We want to see what time is. And he's like going through a goth phase and being like, no, I want just want to go back. I don't want to do this anymore. And they're like, no, you're selfish. We're going to stick around together and we're going to recreate the best of everything that you've experienced together, and we can recreate a golden age for Earth all together and share it with everybody else. Hence, the creation of Pankristocracy.
Pankristocracy?
Pankristocracy.
What is this?
Pankristocracy is a concept, it's an umbrella term for all creative endeavors made under the banner of a code of ethics, morality. Like, it's about being the best version of yourself. It's about inspiring others to be the best versions of themselves. It's about creating beauty out of everything you have at your disposal. And it's about sharing it. And it's about never stop dreaming. It's basically never stop dreaming big, and never lose hope.
On that note, I wonder if it's time to open up to some questions from our
absolutely, guys.
Intergalactic
Have you all
audience.
got the fucking gist of this whole story? Yeah? Beautiful.
If anybody has a question, or if not, we can get back to the punk rock and roll.
Get back to rock and roll.
All right.
All right.
When is the next show? When is your next show?
The show never ends, brother. The show is all everlasting, never ending, ever evolving, and
I heard you got something really amazing coming up, that's why.
indeed I do. This never stops. We never stop. We keep creating and we keep incorporating everybody in our endeavors, because this is to be shared and to be enjoyed by everyone. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for sharing my vision. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you, Leah. Mwah. They came from the Dogstar, Pankristocracy.